Group. This national security law that China is proposing, Ian, what are going to be the consequences of it?
It comes on the back of a lot of arrests that the Chinese have made in Hong Kong of democracy, pro-democracy protesters. This is, for all of them, this is the end of Hong Kong autonomy. This is the end of one state, two systems. It's been sharply responded to, particularly by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. You would expect to see certainly some U.S. sanctions against the Chinese for those banks and others that are involved in implementation of this law. The potential for the United States to even withdraw special trade status for Hong Kong is real. Before that happens, you're going to see an awful lot of companies that have their regional businesses out of Hong Kong, recognizing that long term, this is not really a sustainable play for them. We're getting all sorts of inbound on the back of that.
Ian, this clearly plays well to nationalistic tendencies back on the mainland in China. Did President Xi have a need to find something that supporters kind of celebrated him for, or is it just coincidental?
I don't think it's coincidental. He's under a lot of pressure. This is the worst economic period of his tenure. He's also getting into more of a fight with the Americans, largely pushed by President Trump. That's not popular domestically. And of course, he's been criticized quite soundly domestically for mishandling and covering up the initial outbreak to begin with. So Xi Jinping clearly is looking for ways to rally his own population. No, he doesn't have a democratic election coming up, but he is looking for a third term in 2022. And a lot of senior Chinese advisors and officials are saying that's not at all certain. So I think that plays into it. Also, in the last day, you've seen that Premier Li has said that there's going to be reunification of Taiwan. They dropped peaceful. Every time they've made that statement in these plenaries before, they've always said peaceful reunification. But this time, after Taiwanese elections, Pompeo congratulates the president. The United States signs a new arms deal with Taiwan. The Chinese are giving back pretty hard.
So where does all this leave the U.S. and China ultimately? I mean, do you expect continued heated rhetoric or actually significant policy action from the administration before the election?
I do think it's going to get worse. But the interesting thing is literally just in the last few hours, you had Sonny Perdue, our Secretary of Agriculture, as well as Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. trade rep, coming out and talking about how much progress is being made on the Phase 1 trade deal. So as you and I are sitting here talking about how the United States and China are heading towards a Cold War footing on everything from the World Health Organization and blame for coronavirus and technology and Hong Kong and South China Sea and East China Sea and Taiwan. I mean, the list is as long as my arm. You still have the one notable deal that Trump has put together with the Chinese that everyone in the Trump administration, including Trump himself, is saying how important it is. So he really doesn't want to break that with the implications it would have for tariffs and for U.S. voters, U.S. consumers, unless he has to as we get closer to the election. But let's be very clear. This is going to get massively politicized. They're going to use it as a cudgel to try to beat on Joe Biden. Joe and the Democrats are not exactly soft on China. So I expect this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Ian, what are the implications for the region's capital market centres? I guess on two levels. Will the likes of Singapore benefit, and are the likes of Shanghai ready for this? Are the capital markets on mainland China ready for the possibility of losing Hong Kong as an alternative?
Well, I think Singapore clearly benefits. And the Singaporean government has been very careful to say they don't want these restrictions on Hong Kong. They don't want to be seen as profiting from it because they don't want to raise the ire of the Chinese against Singapore. But quietly, they understand that this is increasingly where you go if you need a small, well-run entrepot for financial markets investment in the region. The Chinese just don't care as much about Hong Kong. Keep in mind, in 1997, during the handover from the UK, Hong Kong represented about 18% of total Chinese GDP. Today, it's about 2.5%. So even though they're still relevant in terms of the financial markets, the impact that Hong Kong has for China is much more in integration in the broader Bay Area with Shenzhen, with Guangzhou, and to make them more politically aligned with Beijing, which is only consolidating their authoritarian and state capitalist regime. And certainly that's going to line Hong Kong on the wrong side of being a channel for Western investment going forward.
Ian Bremmer, great to speak with you as always. Thanks for joining us.
You guys too.